government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Being shipped. From what countries? Coming in from Germany and then replaced by Germany, and in all cases, the United States gets paid back in full. Have you started? What's happening, as you know, is the European Union, if you look, mostly European unions, but let's put it in the form of NATO. It's very similar. But NATO is going to pay us back for everything. In some cases, we're going to be paid back by countries of the European.
Twice yesterday, when you were talking about this, you mentioned conversations you had with the First Lady after talking with President Putin. Has she influenced your thinking on this at all?
She's very smart. She's very neutral. She's very neutral in the sense. She's sort of like me. She'd like to see people stop dying. You know, people said, are you for one side or another? I'm for the side of people stopping dying. We have 5,000, 6,000, and 7,000 people a week, at least. And that doesn't include people from the cities and towns that are having rockets lobbed in there. I mean, people are dying in the cities and towns, too, but
people to move on. But I'm curious, why do you think your supporters in particular have been so interested in the Epstein story?
I don't understand
about how it's been handled.
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think, well, really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say let them have it.
Sir, on the secondary tariffs, are you concerned that secondary tariffs on buyers of Russian oil will hurt American consumers?
I don't think so. I think that whole thing is going to go away eventually. It should have gone away. And Putin does say, oh, I want peace, I want peace. But so far, he hasn't lived up to that. So I think it's going to go away. But we're going to find out soon. We're going to find out soon.
Can you give us more details on the sanctions? Is it 100% sanctions?
No, I don't want to do that. But they're very biting. They're very significant. And they're going to be very bad for the countries involved. I mean, they'll be very, very powerful and very bad for the countries involved. And I hope we don't have to pull that string. And maybe we won't. We'll see. It's got to end. Got to stop the killing.
Welcome back to the SCIF, sports fans. Glad to have you with us today. It's hump day. It's Wednesday, and we're halfway through the week. Wow. This news cycle is just a fire hose. I mean, our team is up all night long pumping out this information and trying to collate it and curate it and get it to you in the best fashion. Lots of stories going on right now. Today's theme, though, is infiltration. And we've got a very special guest for you today at the bottom of the hour, Steve Robinson of the Maine Wire. And we're going to talk about Chinese control of the great state of Maine. I mean, this was, the Mainers were big in the Civil War. They were famous in the movie Gettysburg, very patriotic country, but something has happened up there and it's not good. And Steve, we're going to dig into it with him. It's going to be a great interview. I'm looking forward to this. And I think we'll do more with the Maine Wire in the future. We were going to have Masako Ganani on. She is with Big Honey 6, which is, I'm spacing on his name now, Michael Yan. But she's going to talk about the Japanese research on the vaccines, which is horrific if you haven't seen it. She was supposed to come on today. It looks like she's slipping till tomorrow. I'll probably pre-tape it overnight. Sometimes she's in Japan with Michael. So in the second hour, we've got a treat for you, something we played before, but I'm going to play it again because it's really good. So stay tuned for that. But infiltration into China, this is a big deal, or actually Chinese infiltration into the U.S. is happening in front of our eyes. And it's not just in Maine, it's in other states as well. So that is going to be a topic of ours going forward. It has to be talked about, and we have to be fearless and talk about what's going on, no matter the threats. So in addition, Syria is blowing up. I mean, you saw in the cold open there, the Israelis that are letting the Druze go into Syria to protect their homeland. They're literally running across the border to protect their families and friends and society from the jihadi government of Syria. Hard to believe that you take an Al-Qaeda guy, you trim his beard, put him in a suit and give him a haircut, and he becomes respectable, and you take off the sanctions, you put pictures of him and Trump all over Damascus, and guess what? He's still an Al-Qaeda guy. So they have been attacking Druze positions in southern Syria. Israel is responding. Israel is now, as we speak, right before the show broke, launching massive airstrikes into Damascus, all over southern Syria. They're talking about a demilitarized zone in southern Syria. So this war is expanding again. Michael Yan is right. The war, once you let it out of the bottle, you don't know where it's going to go. And that's happening as we speak right now. So, again, we'll stay on that. We'll try to get somebody from Israel in the next couple of days to talk about exactly what's happening there. But stand by. I want to say hello to the crew. You cleared hot in the chat. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for the engagement. We love it. We try to respond to some of the comments, but we don't always get the time because we're slammed on this show. But we're busy trying to get you the best information so you will be the smartest in your office or in your church or in your school or your job, wherever it is, on all these subjects. Please check out whatfinger.com, great aggregator. They put up a lot of our content, and we appreciate that. We have an agreement with them. So thank you for just scrolling through them once a day would help us a lot. And we're going to talk infiltration today. So I'm going to take a break, but at the bottom of the hour, we're going to bring in Steve Robinson from the Maine Wire, and we'll talk about what's going on with Chinese infiltration in the great state of Maine, but also what's going on with Maine politics. You had Susan Collins vote against a Trump bill this morning, so she's always a thorn in the side. But stay with us. We'll be right back, and we'll talk about all this. Welcome back to the SCIF.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. We are in the world of medicine very acquainted with many modalities, but probably the one most familiar with everybody would be two things: homeopathy and herbals or herbs, maybe some nutrients too, vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing. Now, we do know a lot about the drugs because we have to find out what drug you're taking affects you and what nutrient it depletes you of, because most every drug pharmacy product will deplete something. So we have been trained, and we have a database that we can check into that says this is going to take your B12 away. The pharmaceutical company cannot patent organic substances made by the body. You're not born short of Advil. You're not born short of Ritalin.
Yeah.
You can be born short of insulin, right?
Mm-hmm.
The answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. Right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet, because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods. So
this is what drove you to develop this, was your knowledge of this, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great, and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I want to just give a shout out to our guest at the bottom of the hour. Steve Robinson of the Robinson Report of the Maine Wire will be with us. We'll talk about everything Maine, Chinese infiltration. I'm really looking forward to this interview. He was on Tucker a couple days ago, and I just found it fascinating. So I'm like, Steve, you got to come on. And he so graciously agreed. So stay with us at the bottom of the hour. And a shout out to Nucleo Boost. This bag is empty because I use it every day, but this has the bioaloe to fill the potholes in your body, get it into the cells, as Dr. Waterman said. We're going to have him on soon. This is also the capsules you can get at Nucleo Boost, but you can get all of this at CDM Nutrition for our audio audience. CDM Nutrition, check it out. Look at the subscription monthly. It's cheaper than one at a time, and just get healthy. I mean, protect your body, fill the potholes of all the nutrients that you don't even know you are missing. A lot of what Dr. Waterman says is even some of the organic foods, while it may not have the pesticides, it also does not have the stuff added to the soil so that you get the nutrition that you need that some of the non-organic foods have. So it's really important to make sure you have the nutrients you need at the microcellular level, and Nucleo Boost does that at cdmnutrition.com. I want to talk about some stories. First one, you saw in the, well, let's do the mission brief. I forgot to do that. So busy this morning. I'm your host, L Todd Wood. This is the SCIF, and this is your mission brief. If Trump wants to stop the killing, he can just stop the killing, stop sending weapons, and the killing stops. So that's a curious thing to us. We've been discussing this for some time. We've been out in front of this. We're out in front on this. We're going to stay out in front because we think it's a moral, existential threat to humanity, these forever wars. And this one could go nuclear. When we're going to talk about that with Lindsey Graham's comments recently. The Aspen Security Forum finally unplugged. Great article by John Mills, Colonel Mills, on armedforces.press and on CDM from his Substack. Please subscribe to his Substack. But he's really prescient on a lot of these issues. We have been out in front on the Aspen Institute, which is the Atlanticist kind of, along with the Atlantic and all of that. But the Aspen Institute is the blob central forum, and all of I think they have like 9 CIA former directors on their board or something like that. So the fact that Hegseth pulled the plug on the Aspen Security Forum, where they all get to go out to Aspen, Colorado, and drink wine and talk about controlling the world and depopulating everybody, well, that is been stopped. So kudos to Pete Hegseth. Good for him. That should have happened a long time ago, and I'm surprised it took 6 months, but at least it happened. Lindsey Graham wants to bomb Russia. He put out a statement yesterday, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. Georgia's Raffensperger caught lying again. Guys and girls, there's something going on in Georgia. The stink is up to high heaven. It's mafia-level corruption, and it's breaking, and we have a lot of info that's going to come out. I highly suggest you watch the Georgia show at 7 p.m. tonight Eastern, and we will be breaking news. So stay with us there. But Georgia's Raffensperger took money, of course, from the Frost family, the same family that took a lot of retirees' pensions, and put it in a $140 million Ponzi scheme that was seized by the federal government. And one thing that I want to talk about is that they made, a source was saying, you have to realize they made this look like a bank. It looks like a bank. I'll show you the picture in a minute. But well, we'll talk about that when we get to it. And Syria sinks into another war. Surprise, surprise. So again, stay with us tonight for the Georgia show at 7 p.m. Eastern here on the CDM network. And we're going to be breaking news on more things happening in Georgia. We're just tying up a few loose ends right now, but that will be out tonight. So let's talk about some of these stories. And this one is a big one. So Bibi Netanyahu, who is on trial in Israel, right? For corruption. It's been going on for some time, and it seems like every time the trial proceeds, a new part of the war breaks out. But that's just us noticing, I guess. But so what happened? Trump recently has said Bibi's trial is a show trial. It's fake. It should be stopped. He should be left alone. Well, today, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, shows up for a big photo op and TV hit at Bibi Netanyahu's trial in Israel. Why is this? This looks very much like foreign interference in Israeli justice and politics, internal justice and politics. So why is the U.S. government getting involved in internal Israeli politics? That's a big question, and it's obviously improper. So why is it happening? And we want to call out, and we said it in this article. You can find it on cdm.press and also on our Israeli site, Zionism.com, where we talk about there's a real split happening between those that support the Jewish state and its right to exist. And I think a lot of conservatives are in that camp. But those who are also opposed to this Likud government, Bibi Netanyahu. This is a thing, and you've heard other people talk about it in different forms. But this is a thing. I mean, a lot of Israelis, Bibi's not very popular in country. We've had Neve Kaplan on many times direct from Tel Aviv to talk about this specific issue. And it needs to be highlighted because, a lot of Americans, especially evangelicals, are being told you have to support this government. You have to support the government of Bibi Netanyahu or you're not a good Christian. Well, the Israelis don't even support this government. A majority does not. So what is going on? Why is the Trump administration sending the U.S. ambassador to the trial of Bibi Netanyahu? We found that really disturbing this morning and wanted to point that out. Next point. Pentagon yanks speakers from Aspen Security Forum, blasts its values. Let me bring that up, make sure that's still, there you go. That is there. You can read that on our military channel, armedforces.press. And John Mills writes, years ago, attending the Aspen Summit was normal and routine for the Department of Defense and the rest of the U.S. government, slurping down smoked salmon while hobnobbing with the adults. A great place to be seen. It meant you had arrived in the national security state. Now we realize it was all a mirage and part of the globalist elite culture. We've been on that for some time. Our people in Ukraine told us that in 2019, and we've been talking about it since then. Canceling the appearance of DoD personnel at Aspen is a great move. It is welfare for the globalists who hate America. This is valuable time and money that can be reserved for more important things like making America's military and national security the best in the world. No competitor will test us in any domain once our national security is robust again. Kudos to John Mills for pointing that out. We noticed it, and we were remiss in all of the fire hose of information of getting that out. So really appreciate Colonel Mills putting that out. Let's talk about Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham never met a global world war he didn't like. And Trump came out recently and said there's a 50-day deadline. And we talked about this with Pete Blaber and also with Thierry Laurent recently this week. There's a 50-day deadline for Russia to make peace or else. And we were wondering, well, does that mean the B-2s fly the next day like they did in Iran? Well, Senator Lindsey Graham kind of said that yesterday. He said he was asked what happens, for the sanctions if and other consequences if Russia does not make peace within the next 50 days. And guess what Senator Lindsey Graham said? Well, I would just ask the Ayatollahs what's going to happen. So that's obviously pretty threatening and pretty irresponsible. We've called for Lindsey Graham to resign. He's essentially calling for nuclear war with the Russian Federation, the largest nuclear armed power in the world with the most nuclear weapons. And this is he needs to resign. Lindsey Graham needs to go. He's past his shelf life, needs to go. And we're going to continue calling for his resignation. Now, one thing you have to realize is he said this right after a month after, or 2 months, whatever the date, weeks to months after Ukraine launched the drone attack on Russia's nuclear weapon arsenal, its bomber force sitting on the ramp, which has been reported to be sitting on the ramp, but due to treaties so that the U.S. could see them. So they took advantage of that treaty. And there's some discussion as to whether the treaty was still in force and maybe not, but they were still there because of the fact that all the bombers have to be out on the ramp instead of in protection. And Lindsey, obviously there was Western help in that attack, whether it be intelligence, targeting, real-time intelligence, navigation for the drones, whatever. We don't know. But it definitely attacked Russia's nuclear arsenal. And right after that, Lindsey Graham is basically assuming or suggesting that B-2 bombers, which are nuclear stealth bombers, could attack the Russian Federation. I mean, the guy needs to go. He needs to resign. It's insane. And if Trump wants to end the war, then end the war. Stop. You complain about Putin bombing, but you're sending more weapons to Ukraine. That doesn't make any sense. If you want the war to end, stop sending weapons. Say it's over. We're done. Make peace. And we have peace tomorrow. Or we're going to delay this for another 50 days and another 25,000 Ukrainians only died in June. So what is that? Let's double that, say 50,000 a month. So 2 months, 80 to 100,000 people are going to die because we're delaying this war for 50 days. So why not just end it right now? Say we're no longer supporting Ukraine. They need to make peace and let them make peace. I think there would be peace pretty quick if that happened. And I think Russia wants a neutral state. And if we guaranteed them that neutrality, then I think peace would come pretty soon. So that's all I have to say about that. Well, Murph put out something. Trump said he's not sending weapons, missiles to Ukraine. Ivan Raiklin, Alex Jones interview goes deep into Epstein crap. Lindsey is a douche. We should stop covering anything he says. Well, except he's calling for nuclear war, and he's has clout within the blob national security complex and is kind of a mouthpiece for them. So that's why we cover what he's saying. And Trump is sending weapons. He's sending defensive Patriots and offensive weapons to Ukraine, whether people want to believe it or not. And the war is continuing. So again, if Trump wants to end the war, stop sending weapons. That's our take. Another story I want to get into, which we'll talk about tonight in depth on the Georgia show, is if you go to thegeorgiarecord.com, Brad Raffensperger is caught after saying everybody should return donations, caught taking donations from the Frost family with the $140 million Ponzi scheme in Georgia. More coming out on this. This is breaking wide open. This could bring down the whole cabal, guys. I'm saying it right now. Ring the bell. As they used to say on the street, ring the bell. This is it. This could take them down. $140 million Ponzi scheme. This connects all the way up into Davos. I'm telling you, one of the family members was just in Belgium 2 days after it shut down. So we want to know why. A lot happening. So stay with us on that. That's a whole nother story, which I don't have time to go into right now, but we'll be right back with Steve Robinson from the Maine Wire. So stay with us.
Celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7. I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. All the men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out and belong.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I just want to highlight real quick before we bring in Steve Robinson, the Robinson Report, the Maine Wire. Check it out. We love to support free media because we think that's the kryptonite to the blob and kryptonite to what they're trying to do to the country. So with that, I'm going to bring in Steve. Steve, thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Of course. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
So I saw you on Tucker, and I mentioned I was on Tucker a while back. I'm like, this guy's got to be the real deal. So tell us first about the Maine Wire. What are you trying to do with this this new news outlet?
Well, I think we're trying to test a proposition that if you make media fair in a state, the people of that state can vote their way out of this cultural, economic, political malaise that we seem to have found ourselves in. I don't know how much you're familiar with what's going on in the state of Maine, but it's pretty much been for 6 to 7 years now, really just controlled by progressive hegemony. We had a flash in the pan with Governor Paul LePage, but that was really an exception to the rule. And I think that we've had a mentality and a philosophy that has governed the state for a long time in a very limited, controlled, incurious media. So I think what we're trying to do is restore true investigative reporting about the things that matter, and hope that kind of investigative reporting can equip people with the information that they need to make life, society, culture better here in the state of Maine. So we do that with themainewire.com, and then I have a Substack, which is the Robinson Report, which has a podcast that we put out, a video show, and some of our deeper investigative reporting, like currently our follow-up reporting on the ongoing fight between the Trump Justice Department and the Chinese drug cartels operating here in New England.
So I want to get to that in a minute, but you said something that was really important, that people could enable people to vote their way out. There's the famous quote, you can vote your way into socialism, but you have to shoot your way out. So I agree with you. The free media is really, really important. And it's been astounding to me. We have 7 papers across the U.S. in addition to our international focus. And one of them is in Georgia, in Florida, and elsewhere. But just one little website, when they control the entire media landscape, right? But one little website and a little bit of media accountability, and they just flip out. They don't like it, and they're not used to it. Have you experienced the same in Maine?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, tremendous resistance. I mean, when we first did our reporting on the Chinese drug cartel activity in the state of Maine, we had hordes of screaming leftists coming out and saying, this is xenophobic, this is anti-Asian bigotry, you're using, how dare you, illustrate that story with a dragon, that's racist. Well, now it turns out, as I've been saying all along, and as an indictment handed down in the District of Massachusetts last week proved, these people have been using human trafficking. So is it bad for Asian people to write about drug cartels, or is it bad for Asian people to be kept as indentured slaves in pothouses across New England? I think they'd probably be more concerned with the slavery aspect of what's going on. But we have faced on any given story we face disgruntled leftists and some disgruntled people on the right too, who just want to complain. They seem to enjoy that. But I'm pretty sure in Georgia, you guys are also familiar with the National Trust for Local News. Mm-hmm. And something that's kind of dawned on me over the last 2 years as we've been building the Maine Wire is that for the National Trust for Local News, which is this, it's a big nonprofit funded by George Soros, Pierre Omidyar, the founder of eBay, Hans-Jörg Weiss, a Swiss national who's very interested in American politics. Yeah. For these progressive donors to win the media war through the National Trust for Local News, they don't actually have to control the messaging from newspapers in Maine, like the Portland Press Herald, which they own, the Sun Journal, which they own, the Kennebec Journal, which they own. They don't have to have editorials that are pro higher taxes, pro gun control, pro transgenderism, whatever. They actually just have to destroy them and make them incurious and get rid of investigative reporting and take away anything that might be adversarial to the power structure, which is really what they've done. We have, a figment of news media here in Maine. The newspapers, the website still exists. And if you go there, new words appear on a regular basis, but it's like a pantomime of journalism as opposed to actual investigative reporting. There's nothing there that's really going to be challenging the power structure here in the state, which is almost worse. I would take the honest leftism that's investigating environmental damage, corporate malpractice, the plight of the worker. I would take that over this kind of incurious, knee-jerk, beholden to power type leftism that you see so common in American media companies, where for them news is whatever comes to their email inbox as a press release from a powerful politician. They get a they get a thrill up their leg when they see that Governor what's his name or what's her name has sent them a press release or some inside tip.
So that you saw that during the whole COVID thing, right? I mean, because the media is bought and paid for by big pharma, it wasn't that they were controlling necessarily the narrative. It was the stories that those entities knew they couldn't publish, or they would lose that funding, right? I mean, it's a very similar situation.
Absolutely. This is gets us a little far afield, but here in Maine, we've uncovered the vast number of no-bid contracts that the Janet Mills administration has been giving out to all kinds of entities, nonprofits, businesses, but also to newspaper companies. Our state's largest so-called independent newspaper, the Bangor Daily News, also happens to operate a public affairs company. And under Paul LePage and the previous governor, John Baldacci, there were never any no-bid contracts given to the Bangor Daily News or to its public affairs company. But suddenly, when a hardcore progressive Democrat in Janet Mills enters office, they start getting no-bid contracts to their public affairs firm. And some of those were related to COVID. Specifically, when the governor was mandating the vaccine for healthcare workers and knew that a bunch of healthcare workers were going to quit, they paid the Bangor Daily News to do a public affairs campaign to encourage people to go to become to be healthcare workers, including new Mainers, by the way. So as the old Mainers were resisting forced vaccination with experimental mRNA products and leaving what in some cases was their lifelong career, they were paying the media to recruit refugees and asylum seekers to come in and replace them in these direct care jobs. So if you're in the position of the Bangor Daily News and you're getting millions of dollars to run these public affairs campaigns, are you going to report on, well, I mean, the no-bid contract itself is sensational. The offer of the contract is sensational. The circumstances around it are sensational and newsworthy. But the Bangor Daily News reported on none of it. They just stacked the cash.
So let me ask you, I mean, I have found, and I had a Hollywood, I mean, we raised some money to start this business a few years ago, but I had a big fundraiser out of Hollywood say, you've done more with, less than $1 million than I've seen companies do with 15 or 20 million. And you see these big news entities, these startups, I forget the names, like, I don't know, BuzzFeed or whatever. I think they went under. They lose like $100 million. I mean, you got to work to lose that much money, man. So have you found that you do a lot with a little? I guess is
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a very thrifty mentality. We're not, a large or, very well-funded organization compared to other media entities in this state. But I think that we also, one of the benefits we have is we don't have a baby boomer mentality where we need to, no offense to the baby boomers out there, but we don't have this mentality where we need a central office and we need, 3 secretaries and an HR person and an accountant and a CTO. We're not, beholden to that kind of old school traditional style of thinking. So we can operate what I call a decentralized newsroom. We can have media people who are located throughout the country, which is a huge advantage for us because hiring in Maine is a big difficulty. So we can hire social media people who are, in the Carolinas or California or something like Texas, Tennessee. So we don't have to, be beholden to these old ways of running a media organization. And the other big advantage there is, I think if you look at all the available information, the trend for news consumption in the United States is towards social media. No one is waking up and flipping through every single page of the local newspaper. It's just, I mean, there's an older demographic that's doing that for sure, but by and large, it's people turning to social media. They're looking at X, they're looking at Facebook, they're looking at their favorite, local news app, and that's where they're getting their media. And the newspapers are still stuck thinking they have to print newspapers. The TV stations have a lot of overhead invested in their TV stations. And I'm a talk radio guy, so I'll sad to say this, but the talk radio stations even have overhead involved in maintaining their towers and the physical properties there. So the benefit that new entrants into the journalism world have is that they can be digital, they can be social media first. We can post things, on Twitter without worrying about having to drive traffic straight back to our website so that we get eyeballs on, Google ads or something like that. So I think that that's an advantage that we have, and it's something that the traditional media here in Maine hasn't woken up to. There's no one in Maine that's posting video from legislative hearings direct to social media in the way that we are. And we'll, if we see something controversial or some debate or something newsworthy happening, and it's just video from a school board meeting, a city council meeting, or a legislative committee, we'll post it on social media and we'll get, 1 million views. And pretty soon, Fox or Newsmax or you guys are using the clip. So we've really embraced social media as part of our kind of asymmetrical advantage over the traditional media here in Maine, which are just universally left-wing.
Well, it's definitely, you definitely have to stay nimble on the business model. Have you faced a lot of the censorship? Because we got deplatformed massively, and I mean, it really impacted our distribution. But you got to be savvy about how to make money. I mean, because otherwise you don't survive. But you don't
Yeah.
have the
So
overhead. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Maine Wire has been around for about 12 years now, just as a
Okay.
website, and it's a project of the Maine Policy Institute, which is a
Mm.
501c3, but it never really had dedicated leadership until I
Mhm.
took it over at the end of 2022, and so
Gotcha.
we kind of escaped some of the most controversial COVID era censorship,
Mhm.
where if you just said something on a podcast or you posted something, you would instantly just be, get an automatic deboosting or censorship or shadow ban
Yeah.
and never be able to recover from that. So we kind of got to learn from the unfortunate experience that a lot of other creators had. And so as we began creating, multimedia video content, studio content, we explicitly built ourselves with the intention of being censorship resistant. So we didn't
Mm.
want to be too dependent on Google. We didn't want to
Yep.
be too dependent on YouTube. We
Feel your
know
pain.
Exactly. We know that Facebook is huge in Maine. It's probably the number one social media app in Maine, just because of our demographics and because of how people use it. I would say
Mhm.
everyone is waking up and first thing they check on Facebook. So we know we have to use it, but we also know that it's a potential choke point for
Right.
censorship. So we do have to be smart and savvy about that. We faced attempts by the Mills administration to create a press credentialing system
Mhm.
here in the
Mhm.
state of Maine, which the state of Maine has never had a press credentialing system. And they were doing this specifically to prevent a reporter from the Maine Wire from going to COVID briefings and asking questions.
Right.
And this was not a case where the Maine Wire reporter was going there and asking even, I wouldn't even say remotely controversial questions. These were just questions that like Mainers would ask if they were at the briefings. But they didn't like any semblance of questioning their power and their authority. So they tried to create this credentialing system as a mechanism for censorship. But fortunately, they were unsuccessful in that endeavor. But yeah, it's something that I think you're kidding yourselves if you don't have a strategy for dealing with that as a new media entity. And I'll tell you, just anecdotally,
Mhm.
we saw the power that Facebook has over messaging and political conversation when Mark Zuckerberg did his podcast with Joe Rogan. He
Yes.
went on and said, well, I'm a bow hunter and I do jujitsu and I'm based and we're going to stop censoring people on behalf of Joe Biden and the federal government. And that week, we had our best week of growth on social media. And it
Wow.
wasn't because we had a particularly explosive story, that was driving an unusual amount of traffic. It was just like that week, our biggest growth in terms of new follows, impressions, and then the second week was the same, and the third week was the same, and it continued on until basically the month of gay began, the Pride
Yeah.
Month.
Yeah.
When
Yeah. Yeah.
that began, I think we had some mass reporting from LGBTQ leftists that put us back in the censorship box. But if you pay attention to your analytics and your metrics closely enough, then you can see exactly when somebody in San Francisco toggles the on-off switch.
Oh, for sure.
So it makes
Totally.
you very carefully aware of just how much of your how much do you want to be exposed to something like that, something that's so fleeting and transient, and if
Yeah.
you have a problem with Facebook, good luck taking that up, pleading your case with anybody at that company, at Meta.
Well, wow, you're talking my my talk here because we faced all of that and we took the tack along. We got deplatformed over Ukraine. I mean, some of the reporting we did there on what was going on in country in 2019 and 20, but we never recovered on certain. We're back on X now, but they gave us some of the accounts back. We lost like 8 accounts, and then but we've grown. We have over 6 million on Truth, so you just got to be everywhere. But let me ask you, let's talk about the Chinese Communist Party. The story you were talking about on Tucker fascinated me. I'd heard bits of it, but I didn't know how bad it was. Can you give us the elevator pitch of what's going on in Maine with that?
Well, I think it's a New England wide story, and I think the elevator pitch is that because of the legalization of cannabis in
Mhm.
Massachusetts and Maine, Chinese drug cartels took a playbook here that they first tested in Washington State, California, Oklahoma, and that playbook was to maximally exploit the camouflage that's created when a state legalizes cannabis, and the confusion around that, where people don't really know what the rules are, so they don't know what to question, what's illegal, what's not illegal, and they just kind of keep it to themselves and assume that this is part of globalism and a growth industry that happens when you've legalized it. So in 2020, when the state of Maine passed a law to legalize and formalize the cultivation and sale of marijuana on the adult use side, and joined to it a parallel medicinal use program, there was a gold rush. I mean, you open the doors to a scramble for billions of dollars in revenue. And I think what people didn't realize at the time, they should have, was that the export of marijuana from Maine was going to be a massive, massive industry. So they, because it's federally illegal, there's still this mythology that all of the weed grown in Massachusetts is consumed in Massachusetts because that's what's legal. All of the weed grown in Maine is consumed in Maine because that's what's legal. It's illegal to move it out of the state, so therefore none of it ever moves out of the state. That's a lie, a big fat lie. I would say probably more cannabis is leaving the state of Maine than is being consumed in Maine. And it's going to prohibition states. It's being sold at tobacco shops, hemp shops, convenience stores. It's being sold as hemp. It's being sold, on the traditional black markets. So because of the legalization of cultivation and manufacturing in the state of Maine, we took all of the demand for this drug and kind of focused it in on these jurisdictions where they can get away with growing it. And the Chinese drug cartels had a great model. If you're looking at it in an amoral sense, they had a wide open border thanks to President Joe Biden. They could arrange to smuggle Chinese peasants from the People's Republic of China into Central America over the southern border, get them a flight into New York. In New York, they can get a driver's license, no questions asked. They'll give a driver's license to a non-citizen, ditto for Massachusetts, and then they'll bring them up to Maine. They'll steal their passport and say, you owe us a smuggling debt for bringing you here to the United States, and we're going to hold on to your passport until you're done working that off at a cannabis house in Maine. And if you're at a rural property in Maine and you don't have a vehicle and you don't speak the language and you're an hour and a half from your nearest grocery store, you might not necessarily be in chains with a slave master over you, but you're not free.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the biggest advantages that the Chinese had over legitimate legal players, is that they don't have to pay their workers. It turns out, slavery is great for your margins. That's what the cartels, that's their big secret to business. But they also steal electricity. They don't pay taxes. They don't pay fees. They can sell their product out of state at a huge markup. So they have all these kind of advantages over the people in Maine who are trying to enter the cannabis markets legally and ethically. And because of that, it was enormously profitable. And they took the profits that they were earning and laundered that money back into buying more property. When I sat down with Tucker for that interview, I was of the belief that we were dealing with probably 300 to 500 properties in the state of Maine. Now, after subsequent meetings and source interviews and talking with some people in the real estate industry here in Maine, I think we're probably closer to 700 to 1,000 properties.
Wow. And can those be clawed back in any legal sense?
Yes, they can. So there's 4 properties in Maine that were subjected to search warrants have been seized by the Department of Justice. This happened even under Joe Biden's U.S. attorney here in Maine, who wasn't particularly interested in clamping down on the Chinese drug trafficking. It was just so offensive and so obvious that she had to do the bare minimum to get away with not being a complete phony. And she was rewarded with a judgeship from the Democratic governor, by the way, after she stepped down. But there is a mechanism to seize these properties that the Justice Department can use, that the Trump administration can use for sure. There is a question, though, of to what use can these properties now be put? Because through our reporting, we've learned that the Chinese drug traffickers, both in California, Massachusetts, and Maine, they are using Chinese-made pesticides and fungicides that they import illegally from China. There's no registered use for them here in the United States. They are wildly toxic. In Siskiyou County, Northern California, just yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, they declared a local state of emergency due to Chinese drug trafficking operations, and specifically because of the use of these chemicals, because law enforcement officers are being hospitalized when they respond to these pot
So
grows.
you mentioned something. This is why I wanted to have you on. We have and just let me interject. We have a big military audience, and you mentioned unrestricted warfare, that this might
Yes.
be part of that, as in literally chemical warfare. So go on, please.
So these chemicals that we're talking about were only identified when the National Guard's weapons of mass destruction testing lab was brought in. That's the kind of chemicals we're dealing with. They're nerve agents. That's how that's why they're useful for marijuana, is because if you use them like a fumigant, they kill off any bug, any mildew, any pest that could possibly be ruining your product and diminishing the value of your product. These will help preserve it, but they also will attack the human nervous system. And so there are law enforcement officers who have been hospitalized, all kinds of people who have had allergic reactions. And I think it's an unknown and a very important question to answer, is to what extent are the properties in Maine that are now being abandoned or seized by the Justice Department or will be seized by the Justice Department, to what extent are they now poisoned and contaminated with these toxins? Can they be recovered and made habitable? Can people live in them? What needs to be done for these properties to be rehabilitated? There's a tremendous amount of environmental devastation that comes with these grows wherever they pop up. But in Maine, we've found time and time again that these grows they dump the detritus from their growing activities all around the property, or in ponds, or on the sides of roads. So if they're using these pesticides, those are also potentially contaminating groundwater as well as the local environment. And we can't even get the governor of Maine to acknowledge that this problem is happening, right? She hasn't said a single word about it. So we're about 1 billion miles away from being able to develop the infrastructure and the political will to be able to reckon with the environmental and public health challenges with this. But as far as the chemical warfare aspect of it, if you were a Chinese colonel in the People's Liberation Army trying to come up with a way to weaken your enemy in America, what better way than to enable criminal organizations that wildly inflate the cost of middle class housing, because middle class people in Maine can't buy housing anymore. The Chinese drug cartels come in with a cash offer. They can close in 25 days. It's 20% over your asking price. They're blowing middle class Maine families out of the water when it comes to bids, and they have been for 4 or 5 years. So you're making the local population dispirited and kind of keeping them subjugated in poverty, while at the same time you're making this drug as cheap as possible all across the United States. In some cases, it's very potent, and you're lacing it with these chemicals that have unknown and even maybe unknowable health consequences for people who vape them, smoke them, eat them in states 2,000, 1,000 miles away, who never even know where it's actually grown, where the product actually comes from. So, I mean, if you're trying to find a way to poison and weaken the American people and have them pay you to do it, you couldn't invent a better way. So if this was intentionally part of unrestricted warfare as originally envisioned by those Chinese military authors, well, this is what it would look like. I don't know how it would look different.
It's eerily similar to what they did with the vaccines, and I don't know where you stand on that, but forcing people to take them while you're getting rich doing it, which harms the end user. I mean, it's very similar, right? I mean, it's
I would say
warfare.
I would say it's similar to that, but the difference is that they're also able to stockpile cash behind U.S. borders. So right now, if you tried to wire transfer a huge amount of money from China, I mean, it's gonna set off some alarm bells at the Treasury Department. But because marijuana sales through existing state level dispensaries are still only a cash business, it allows these cartels to amass huge cash fortunes that are totally untraceable. So if you had other criminal intentions, other malign intentions, you would have a huge source of untraceable cash in order to operate. If you were trying to get, say, terroristic elements across the southern border and get them armed, well, you've got a huge amount of cash. And we saw this last week in the indictment handed down in the District of Massachusetts. These guys were ringleaders of one small family operating within the Chinese drug cartels in New England. And they, the guy had a Porsche, but that was like $95,000 luxury sports car. And there was $700,000 he had just hidden away in that car. He had Rolexes, Cartier bracelets, and he was living in a $1.5 million house. But they're not here because they like to smoke weed, and they're not here because they enjoy fancy cars, although there is this kind of pagan materialism about them. They're here to stockpile cash. And I think that what should really worry Americans is what they intend to use that cash for.
Wow. So I know we only got about 4 minutes here. You got to go at the top of the hour, the hard break. But let me ask you about I want to switch to another subject. The GOP in Georgia and in Florida, where we've had direct experience, and also in Connecticut, not so much in Connecticut, but in Florida and Georgia is very, very, very corrupt. I mean, they're literally working for the other team, imposing tyrannical structures. Do you see that in Maine? Are they just controlled opposition, or is there a real Republican effort in Maine?
Yes and no. I would say that there are plenty of Republicans who are doing very well losing. And if you're making $250,000, $300,000 a year losing, then why would you want to win?
Sure.
It's if they're comfortable, they're fine with it. But I think that there's a strong, big, and growing conservative movement here in the state of Maine that senses that we're at the edge of the event horizon. And that if things don't change direction very quickly in the next year and a half, 2 years, that we'll slip over the edge. And the Maine that we knew will not be recoverable after what's happened, if that point hasn't already been crossed, to be honest. But yeah, we do see that this is a uniparty phenomenon. And I began to sense it when I started to grasp how big the Chinese drug cartel story would be. There were some popular, well-known Republican figures who stopped picking up the phone when I called, and wouldn't make eye contact with me at the State House, and weren't so excited to see me as they were when I was talking about how bad high taxes and welfare abuse was. They didn't mind when it was just boob bait for the bubbas coming out, but when it was actual investigative journalism targeting something that maybe they're making some money off of, they were a little bit more concerned.
Well, the GOP hates us in Florida and Georgia, especially, but because exactly as you said, I mean, if you can't clean your own house, then how are you going to do what's right for the country? So there's so much corruption on the GOP side that they don't like anybody looking. But let me ask.
Just one last thing I'll say on that is universally, the people who operate in formal GOP structures are dweebs and nerds. So they don't like this idea that somebody can just go start a media company or a podcast. They don't like new entrants having a bigger voice than them. It's well, I was in the Youth Republicans. I was the president of the College Republicans. Now I'm the co-executor of the Republican Party, deputy commission on the platform. You must respect me. No, I don't care. I don't go sit in your office and collect those donations from the RNC and leave me alone.
Or in Georgia, in Georgia, start a Ponzi scheme and steal $140 million. And
well, that too, yeah.
But exactly. Josh Buffoon in Georgia GOP is right up there. What about state government? A couple minutes left, but state government. Any chance of? What's the structure there? It's mostly Democratic.
It's all Democratic. We've had our legislature and the governor's mansion totally controlled by a Democratic majority for, I think, 6 years, 8 years now. Really, since Governor LePage left office, we haven't really had much of Republican control. But what we really have, the bigger problem in Maine, the progressive dominance, the one-party rule is a problem, but we've expanded the size of government so much that even the people you would expect to be conservatives are in fact dependent on government and happy with the status quo. All of our big construction companies Well, their biggest customer is the state government through transportation contracts or wind power contracts or solar panel contracts. So are they going to complain about the solar panels and the wind turbines that are driving up electricity rates? Not really. The nonprofit industrial complex. I mean, it's like a third of people in the state of Maine are employed by nonprofits. I mean, I'm one of them. But I think that there's a big difference between nonprofits funded through philanthropy and nonprofits that are funded through money that's taken at the point of the gun from working supposedly free Americans
or George Soros.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if there's Soros money going to a nonprofit, you can bet 100% there's also taxpayer money going to it.
Sure.
But because there's so many people who are dependent on taxpayer money and kind of okay with the status quo in Maine, it erodes your ability to develop a lot of popular enthusiasm for change.
So, quick question, last one: cities, are they decaying in Maine?
Yes.
Okay.
Open air drug markets.
Wow. Steve, I want to have you back, man. Thanks for your time. I know you got to go. Really appreciate it. And
just let me know.
We'll see you next time. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. We are in the world of medicine very acquainted with many modalities, but probably the one most familiar with everybody would be two things: homeopathy and herbals or herbs, maybe some nutrients too, vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing. Now, we do know a lot about the drugs because we have to find out what drug you're taking affects you and what nutrient it depletes you of, because most every drug pharmacy product will deplete something. So we have been trained and we have a database that we can check into that says this is going to take your B12 away. The pharmaceutical company cannot patent organic substances made by the body. You're not born short of Advil. You're not born short of Ritalin.
Yeah.
You can be born short of insulin, right? Mm-hmm. The answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. Right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods.
So this is what drove you to develop this, was your knowledge of this, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. You know that.
Excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Please check out My Pillow. Go spend some time on the website, mypillow.com. Use promo code CDM for the best discounts. That's promo code CDM for our audio audience. Mike has a lot of products I got to order some more slippers. I'm waiting for them to come back in stock. Mine are destroyed. I'm having to duct tape them together. I've worn them. I love them so much. But all of Mike's products are very, very high quality. So check it out. Use promo code CDM. We are a live show, and we're always producing on the fly. And I was going to play an interview with Eric Prince again, but we have David Cross is going to join us to talk about Georgia. He's agreed to come on. David, thank you for carving out a little time, my friend.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you having me.
So a lot happening. We had you on in the recently about the Frost family Ponzi scheme, the charges, the consent agreement which came out. But where do you see things sitting right now?
As far as their situation goes right now, the consent agreement, when I first read it, I got a little upset because it looked like Brant Frost Sr., the fourth, I call him Papa Frost. It looked like Papa Frost was getting off with a slap on the hands and then, or a slap on the wrist. And then I went back and looked at previous things or previous Ponzi schemes in the past, whether it was Madoff or another guy that was down in Florida with the Viking funds. I looked into those, and all of them had the exact same thing. They had a civil consent agreement agreement that basically says that Frost says that he's not going to continue to defraud people. He's not going to continue to take deposits. He's not going to continue to take business. What most people don't understand, what I had totally forgotten about, is the fact that the government can run a civil case and at the same time run a criminal case. And so far they haven't come forward yet with the criminal charges yet, but I think those are coming very soon.
So Michael Watley was in town yesterday, I believe, and he had a dinner or a lunch at an event. You have a formal complaint in front of him for essentially the GOP convention being rigged in Georgia in June. Did he call you?
No, I have not heard from him. I've got people that are all over the country and all over the state of Georgia that see him. They ask him about what's going on with this thing, and the last thing was he said it's in front of the disputes committee or the appeals committee, whatever you want to call it. And I have not heard anything from his office, from the RNC, from the council's office. And and after seeing those pictures yesterday of Michael Watley yucking it up, before the All-Star baseball game with Josh McCoon and doing their little thumbs up thing, it made me want to throw up when I saw it, because it basically says, it looked to me like Watley was sitting there with McCoon and going, "Oh, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Let's go to the ball game."
So just for our audience's perspective, there was an event that Michael Watley, the head of the national GOP, appeared at. You have a complaint in front of him for the convention being rigged. The people who were helping to rig that convention, blocking microphones, literally, Brant Frost V, his family just had their business seized with a $140 million Ponzi scheme. That's the SEC's words, not mine. And but their attorney is Josh Kaufman, or what's his first name? Alex Kaufman.
Yep.
And all these people met yesterday, but you were not invited. So the attorney for the Frost family, the attorney who's the attorney for the GOP, the head of the national GOP, the head of the Georgia GOP, all met and had lunch and talked about whatever, but you are the one harmed, and they don't even bother talking to you. I find that.
And what's bizarre, Todd, is that the national committee woman, Amy Kramer, was not invited, was not there, but the previous national committee woman was there, along with the current national committee man. So all I can say, like I said, I saw the picture, made me want to throw up, because it just tells me that I think Michael Watley is probably just as corrupt, as the Frost. And I mean, I hate to say that, but I mean, I'm hearing nothing. And my dad taught me the same as your dad: actions speak louder than words. And right now, I see no action.
Well, the old saying, if it looks like a duck. Well, here's the picture, and that's a little hard to see, but you've got Michael Watley, Josh McCoon, and Alex Kaufman, the attorney for the Frost family, all having lunch while you have a complaint in front of them for a stolen convention. It's really obscene. So anyway, anything else you want to get out, David? I just wanted to get you on.
So it's really interesting for anybody who doesn't know. There's a lot of different details that are happening with this thing. But here's one key detail. I had a discussion with a reporter from the Associated Press that was passed last Friday, and one of the things he was asking me was, he said, "Hey, I heard that maybe you had been the one that reported the Frost business to the Secretary of State's office." And I said, "Yeah, I did. I saw a commercial where Brant Frost, the younger Brant Frost, who I beat terribly, beat him badly 2 years ago, where he was on there making promises about making 8 to 13% return on our promissory notes and that kind of thing." And when I was watching, when I saw this commercial last summer, I said, "God, there's no disclaimers on there. There's no, it's full of promises." My compliance people would have a fit if they saw me say something like that. So anyway, I saw it. I reached out to the Secretary of State's office and I said, "Hey, are these people registered to sell securities in Georgia?" And they got back to me and said no. And so I sent them a copy of the video and I said, "You might want to check into this." And the last I heard was that the elder Frost, or Papa Frost as I call him, was telling investors that it was my fault that his company came down. And
wow.
Listen, I can't write a sternly worded letter to the Secretary of State and get your business shut down. I don't have that kind of power. I am not God. But what did happen was they looked into it. They clearly thought something was going on, and they kicked it up to the federal government, and that's who took down this business. So yes, I was the one that that reported their business, and there's other folks that are out there saying, "Oh, you shouldn't celebrate the downfall of other people." And I tell you what. In my business, you absolutely celebrate when criminals are stopped. You absolutely celebrate, and you do everything you can to help people. So I was supposed to be down at the Capitol yesterday to be able to help out with this Tim Fleming dog and pony show about the blue ribbon, the blue ribbon election procedures committee, and that's a bunch of nonsense because Tim Fleming is Governor Kemp's choice for the next Secretary of State. So he's going to go do his dog and pony show and tell us all how secure our elections are, just like the Epstein list doesn't exist, which is a bunch of nonsense too. But I should have been down there yesterday, but I have a client that's dying, and we needed to work on some of his financial planning. And then I also spent some time yesterday with one of the victims that literally gave money to Frost in May, and then and he's just dumbfounded. He's literally in shock. The guy that I was talking with, he's like, "Oh my God." He's like, it's like I'm 40 years old all over again. I'm starting back at age 40. And I'm doing everything I can to help those people. And I told him, anybody who's been harmed by the Frost family, we will do pro bono financial advice and planning to help you figure things out, because I think a lot of people are just in shock about what happened, and sometimes it helps to have somebody who can see the bigger picture and kind of help you navigate forward.
Totally. So I've been talking to another source. There's another angle of this, in that one, they took money from people, and then the money was funneled to politicians. So there's a whole nother layer of this thing that could come out on how that went down and who benefited and what resulted from those money flows. But there's another angle to this. A source was talking to me about early this morning, in that they made it look like a bank. That may be hard to see, but First Liberty Building and Loan, it looks like a bank. And their advertising said, "When the big banks tell you no, we will say yes." I mean, it for the unsophisticated, farmers are very sophisticated because they trade commodities and everything, but they may not know, or people that put money into this in Georgia that may not have the financial experience to understand what a bank is and what it's not, what's regulation, what's not. They made it look like a bank.
Yeah, the average person is going to look at the name of that building. They're going to see the gold lettering. They're going to see all this stuff. They're going to assume that it is some type of regulated institution.
Yeah,
because that's the way it looks, and that's the verbiage that they're using, and they're kind of saying, "Hey, we're like that." And they're preying on your institutional memory, because almost everybody who's watching this, you probably saw, It's a Wonderful Life, as a kid, around Christmas time. And and George, I can't remember his last name, the main character, George, he was the head of a building and loan, and it makes it sound like it was a bank. So they're preying on this institutional memory, and they're preying on this, hey, we do business with these people, and they're really smart, so you should do business with us too.
And we're Christians and we're preachers and all of that.
Yeah, and we work with this politician or that politician, and so they're pretty smart people, so they must think we're pretty good too. And it's all this. It's this concept. It's a psychological concept called social proof, and it just says that if one of your friends sees me and you sitting down talking about investments, your friend is going to assume that you've done all the homework, even though they're not supposed to, and it's on them to check me out. They're going to assume because that's the way human beings are built. It's a survival instinct that goes all the way back to where's the food, where's the water. So they are using you against yourself to get your money, and it's repugnant.
Well, I was talking to Steve Robinson from the Maine Wire just in previous hour about the criminal cartels in Maine, and I've seen this with the Vaxes, with Big Pharma. They do a criminal act, but they get rich at the same time while they're hurting you. And that's what a lot of the GOP apparatus has done. They got wealthy. They prevented the grassroots from coming into power. They hurt the democratic process, but they got rich at the same time. I see a lot of similarities here with this. And they made a decision a long time ago to make that building look like that. It wasn't like some people are saying, well, during COVID, it went bad and they had to get out of a hole or whatever. But they made that decision a long time ago to look like that.
It looks like an old style bank. It looks like it's been there for 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. David, anything else? Thanks for coming on. But just wanted to
listen. I appreciate you. Let me hop on today. I'm going to be sending out a new email today to get people to sign the petition for, to recall this thing. And even though it's a slim chance, as I said before, it would dishonor the people that helped support me and that gave to my campaign if I didn't do this. So if you get the email or you want the email, you can actually get the email by going to crossforgeorgia.com. I'll post it there in just a couple minutes. You can sign the petition right there. There'll be a red link up there. You can click it, and you can also see some of the things that happened during the election that was behind the cheat.
Do you need to be from Georgia to sign that petition?
No. You at this point right now, if you're a Republican, if you're anybody, that's a Republican that's out there that shares conservative values, this is your way to tell the RNC to protect Georgia, to protect the Republican brand.
And I just want to throw your website up, us-am.com. We totally trust David. We've worked with him for a long time. We've had a lot of great feedback from clients. So if you have financial issues, talk to David Cross. David, thank you very much. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this, but that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have foot, slog, 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 slogging over Africa. Foot, 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 slogging over Africa. Boot, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I mentioned we were supposed to have Masaka Ganaha, Michael Yan's partner, on, but didn't work. She's in Japan. So we're probably going to tape that early morning tomorrow. So we have Hole in the show today. So I'm going to run an interview we did with Eric Prince a while back. I had a lot of good feedback on it to close out the show. Hope you enjoy it. And I'll come back in towards the end and we'll close this out. But here's the interview with Eric Prince. Welcome back to armedforces.press. We're honored today to have with us former CEO of Blackwater and serial entrepreneur Eric Prince. Thanks, Eric, for taking the time. I know you're slammed, but appreciate you coming on.
Nice to see you.
So you went to the Naval Academy. I'm an Air Force grad, but I wanted to start with that. I mean, you left early. And there's been all these problems at the academies. Do you think, one, do they have a purpose? And if they do, how do we resolve the problems at the service academies, which are endemic to what they're teaching our young officers?
Look, I think the service academies have gone adrift from what they were supposed to do. They're supposed to teach people to do naval combat.
Yeah.
Not diversity, not environmentalism, to teach people to destroy other countries' navies. And when you divert from that mindset, you really divert from the purpose of why the taxpayers are spending all that money to train naval officers. I guess my second perspective on that was having gone to the Naval Academy for a year and a half, and I left because I found the political correctness, the double standards, the nonsense to be untenable. And so I left. I went to a civilian school. I would say I learned more about leadership serving on the fire department in the local community than I did in a very artificial attempt at a learning lab that was a Naval Academy. The idea that the next class ahead of you is supposed to teach you, they don't know shit. Okay, for a junior in college to teach leadership to a sophomore or a freshman, come on. So, but then it was really clear to me when I went to Buds, because I went through OCS, and so there was a mix of OCS, a couple of ROTC, and a few academy officers in the class, and how their style of leadership, their interaction, their ability to motivate, lead other SEAL candidates was exceedingly limited. And so I've had a pretty dim view of the academy from the beginning, and that really reinforced it.
So that begs the question: how do we train our officer corps? What's the best method we could do in the future? If you were God, what would you put in place?
I still think there's a place for direct commissioning programs, but I really I think there's a much bigger place. There should be a bigger place for Mustangs.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, for sure.
And NCOs. I mean, look, in my business career, I had really good experience with warrant officers because both the warrant officers that were running the training program at SEAL Team when I was there, or the guys that came and really helped me start Blackwater, and the guy that was the president that really grew the Blackwater. I might have been the idea guy behind Blackwater. Gary Jackson, a retired SEAL warrant officer, made the place run. And Jim Surowski, the director of training, Ken Vieira, the original general manager, all SEAL warrant officers, the embodiment of true subject matter expertise, commissioned with with true leadership credibility that had been earned. So I have a bias. I have a bias towards Mustangs because of that.
I was reading about your career and followed your career, and that's why I wanted to have you on. But you were very proud of the record you had at Blackwater. Very low percentage of some armed conflict. Some guys were killed, but I could tell you were proud of the product you created and the focus on taking care of your guys. Is that where it came from the NCOs you had in leadership?
Yeah, I was certainly part of that culture as well. I think I learned that from my dad, from running a manufacturing business. And, my dad started off with scratch with nothing. And so by day, he would be the president, CEO of the business, trying to make it happen when they started with 6 employees.
Sure.
And at night, he would go work a second shift and run a boring mill all night, making big steel parts. And 12 hours or half-hour days or half days. So try to lead from the front and take care of the people. I'd say that's one of my proudest things professionally is that I still run into a lot of former employees or contractors around the world, and they say, "What are you doing next? Because we want to join you." And in that period that I worked for Blackwater was some of the happiest times of my life. So that's satisfying.
Well, we'll get to what you're doing now later, but because I want to dig into that. But take a step back. I spent my summers up in Mackinac, Michigan. You're from that area, not from Mackinac, but the area. And you went to Hillsdale. How was that experience at Hillsdale? I've always been curious what that school's like.
Hillsdale was good. It was obviously a contrast from a school run by the federal government, the Naval Academy, to Hillsdale, which is one of 2 in the country that accepts no federal funding. So if I wanted to do ROTC while I was at Hillsdale, they say, yeah, that's fine. You can go do ROTC at the U of M, but there's no federal money spent here. They've never accepted it, and I don't think ever will.
Wow.
Because with it comes federal strings. So it was Hillsdale's a great campus, great culture. It's a smallish school. I think there's only 13 or 1400 kids, but I made the most of it. I learned a lot from the fire department. I learned a lot. I dove for the county sheriff's department doing body recoveries. I never really did the Greek system, but I made it my goal to go back into OCS and go to BUDS after I left the academy and work towards that. I missed most of the fun times of college, and I still regret that.
A lot of us have regrets. So, I flew for JSOC MH-53s, and I think our paths may have crossed in the Balkans because we were flying out of Brindisi during the Yugoslav stuff into Italy. But my thought is we were training for the last 20 years in the last war. We were focused on, low intensity conflict, special operations, and we built the show. I mean, we built an incredible capability for the United States to prosecute those wars. But have we taken our eye off, large scale combat? What do you think?
Yes, and I fear that people default to what they know, and the whole SOCOM world knows the counterinsurgency fight and not major state-on-state conflict. And so the idea of being able to fly in a helicopter to an objective, patrol in, and shoot somebody in the face, and then get on the helicopter and leave, hard to do in a super mature air defense environment. And that's the kind of the whole term SEAL comes from sea, air, and land, and it's the whole idea about how do you get to your objective to where you're going to do your job. And so I'd say the hard part of special operations goes from being actions on the objective to actually just getting there, getting to the fight. And I think people need to remember that.
I think we need to be creative going forward, and I want to get to that too. But I have some family members in the U.S. Army who are on armored vehicles, and what is your opinion? I played on our previous show this morning the drone attacks in Kursk and all this stuff. It's just really intense, and I know you're up on this, but it's completely changed the entire face of warfare. Are these armored vehicles just sitting ducks? I mean, they're targets, right? Or do they have a place in the future? Because you need that shock value of cavalry, right? The shock and awe on the ground, like the old horse cavalry. But how do you take ground? How do you hold it in this environment?
It went from infantry alone combat 2,500 years ago
Yeah.
to using chariots. And chariots were the attack helicopter or the armored vehicle of the battlefield then. And then
Yeah.
Elephants were involved. And then eventually the tank came out in World War I. And so there's always been a pendulum swinging back and forth between advantage to the infantry, right? The Panzerfaust or an RPG swings it back towards an infantryman, or you have great armor. Right now, the FPV drone and all the democratization and the cheapening of precision strike means that advantage is really back towards infantry and very small units, away from a big battle wagon. I would say give it a few years, and whether it's better armor, cages that protect against smaller FPV drones, lasers, EMP shock, lots of ways for battle wagons to improve their protection. And so it's always we're at one end of the seesaw right now.
So to switch gears, I know you're, you have a lot of contacts in Israel, as do I. But what is going on with this? And I know that the Witkoff was saying the Israeli special forces, and not Israeli, but Turkish special forces and drones were the ones that put HTS into Syria. In fact, I think you mentioned that. What's going on there? Are we going to have a conflict? Netanyahu said recently, Turkey. It's I think his words were it's almost inevitable or something like that, almost certain that we'll have a conflict with Turkey and Israel. Any thoughts on that?
Well, sure. I stand by that. Turkish Special Operations and Intelligence definitely stimulated HTS, which is just a rebranded ISIS Al-Qaeda like affiliate. And the leader, who was on the wanted list, got a good PR guy and trimmed up his beard. Trimmed up his beard, got a new
put a suit on.
Exactly. Says the right things. And so that's look, that Syria is basically subjugated to Turkey now. Don't think any different, really. And so the Erdogan's goal is to rebuild the Ottoman Empire, a caliphate, and he's on his way to do it. If you'd watched any of his interviews over the last 10 years, he'll talk about including not just Syria, but northern Iraq, and even parts of Bulgaria.
Well, the Bulgars. Yeah, he's talking now about taking Syrian land. I mean, that is Israel behind or who is behind the demonstrations against Erdogan in Turkey right now?
There is an actual opposition to Erdogan, and there's always been the rural areas are the most kind of hardline religious conservative zealotry, and the cities are kind of the most pro freedom. And so this mayor of Istanbul, I believe, that was arrested is the most popular likely opposition candidate to Erdogan, and he's locking him down. So imagine that's a so-called NATO ally locking up his opposition.
Well, like Trump's
like other political parties.
Yeah, no kidding. So Trump is making nice to Erdogan right now. What do you see behind that? I mean, he's gonna. I think there's gonna be conversation. And then Witkoff is saying, "Oh, there's great news coming out of Turkey." I mean, is it just the art of the deal, or what's going on?
I don't know if that's art of the deal or if that's Muslim Brotherhood influence and the money from Qatar that is continually manipulating reality. We'll see.
Interesting. So speaking of that area of the world, are you active in the Emirates these days? I mean, there's a lot happening there, right? No,
not really.
Okay. I've got some questions from the force here I wanted to bring to you, and I'll just read these. There's a huge over-reliance on cell phones in the Army. Should SecDef ban it? Soldiers are saying they are in about 15 group chats in turn with instant communications. Planning has become less extensive, creating an inherent weakness in our force. And we had an example of this of Waltz and on Signal. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I've been, it's the Fitbit bands that are transmitting information and all kind of stuff, devices that are giving away SIGINT. I think the Russians in Lviv used that to take on a NATO base, not NATO base, but logistics place a couple years ago?
Look, the modern cell phone has become it's surveillance capitalism. The reason Google and Apple are two of the most valuable companies in the world is because of surveillance capitalism and the idea that those phones have an advertising ID, which facilitate the export of your data of where you go, what you buy, who you call, what you browse. And it works with those apps to harvest it. Now, Signal is run by a foundation. It's supposed to be private and secure. I'm not as sure of that, but we did. That's why we did a phone starting just over 4 years ago, to be completely independent of that Google and Apple universe, so that you could communicate, but that at the OS level, our operating system on our hardware, it blocks all the tentacles of data harvest. In fact, we just did a test between our phone, the unplugged phone, an iPhone and a Android running Google mobile services, and used it normally with the same apps for a week. And the amount of trackers that were attached at the end on the Android was 100. On the iPhone, it was 57, and the unplugged phone, it was 0.
Wow.
So again, we're just trying to test our hypothesis, our promise. But yeah, that's why we did an unplugged phone. We're going through the process of open sourcing all the code, and it's made in Indonesia. It's not made in America yet, but we're moving towards making it in America. And because we believe in digital privacy, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment rights, and we didn't set out, and nor are we pursuing making a government phone. This is, I think, it's most important for citizens to communicate freely and privately, and that your data is your data and not anybody else's.
So I heard you on another podcast say that there's a switch on the phone to like disconnect the battery, and because a lot of every phone now, even if you turn it off, you're still tracked, right?
Right here on the side of an unplugged phone, there's a kill switch which physically separates the battery from the electronics, just like in the old phones you used to pull the battery.
Yeah,
that's what that does. So we can air gap the battery from the electronics, and so that off means off.
So tracking is a huge issue geographically. Geo tracking with
with the ad IDs
from the GPS and also the the triangulation, all of that, and law enforcement is using it. Even you can go buy the data. You can't actually tell who it is, but you can the stuff they did in Georgia with the movie from I forget
the mules.
Yeah. So I mean, you can track people very accurately. What's the solution to that? Because if you turn off your phone, I know it doesn't do that, but if it's on, they can still track it, right?
An unplugged phone doesn't have an advertising ID. We literally don't have one.
Interesting. So therefore, they can't track you geographically as your phone moves around, or if they buy that data.
The ad ID, right? So
sorry, excuse my ignorance. I'm just trying to understand.
An advertising ID is like a 32-digit alphanumeric code,
right?
Which is assigned to your device,
and
as that code on the phone, and the phone is interacting with towers, it makes it very easy to track the unique breadcrumb trail of that device.
Yeah.
If you don't have one, can't do that.
Interesting. So next question, do you believe general officers, let me get rid of that. Sorry about that. Do you believe general officers get enough training knowledge on joint operations? That's a question from the field.
Joint operations, I think more than that, I think general officers need some actual business and cost accounting experience. Because they've completely lost the plot as to what things cost. And ultimately, warfare is still about what is affordable. You can fight all you want, but you have to be able to afford to fight. And so I would insist on some accounting and a bit more actual business interaction, and not defense contractor interaction, but normal logistics, manufacturing companies, A. B, in joint operations, yes. I remember my dad used to, at his old business, he incentivized, the bonuses were based on individual performance. Some was it on company's performance, but a third of their bonus was how they performed as a team. And so by holding that over their heads and rewarding people when they actually do cooperate, and that speaks to they should probably change how fitness reports and evaluations are done so that maybe it's more of a group write-up that if you are in a joint environment, how well did you contribute to the overall effort versus the inflationary kudos that are included in the modern day fitness reports.
That would really change the input to the OPR or OER if you had other. Wow, that would be interesting.
But if you want, but here's the thing: people respond to incentives. There's really no incentive. Look, I in my limited time in the military, and I'm sorry to dish on the Air Force, I found Air
I worked
Force.
for the Army, really. I mean, I wore an Air Force uniform, but go ahead.
I found the Air Force to behave like an armed Air Force union, like an armed airline union.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of reasons that they didn't want to do their job, instead of just saying, "Hell yeah, let's go. There's a plane. Just find a way to make it work." That was not my experience. As an active duty guy, some time in the reserves, and then as a contractor interacting with the Air Force all the time, we got to where we specifically negotiated our contracts to not depend on the Air Force at all. We said, hell no, we'll organize all our own lift, everything. We want to be responsible for it. We don't want to depend on the Air Force because we just found them so difficult to work with. That's my experience as a contractor. I would imagine many active duty people have the same problem. I know the Navy, the SEAL teams have that problem with the Navy. If they need a submarine to put an SDV on or whatever, it's the territoriality of services is it must be broken down.
Oh, completely agree. You know, I had a general at the Air Force Academy tell me when I wanted to go fly helicopters, he's like, I didn't spend $500,000 for you to go fly a helicopter. I mean, the fighter pilot mafia is definitely a thing. And that's unfortunate because I actually saw that in soft aviation as well, because you had competition between the Army Rotary Wing and the AFSOC and all that. And that led to not the best solution for the troops. That's it for the SCIF today. We're going to end that right there, and we will play the rest of the interview later in the week if we have time. But thank you for joining us today. Kind of a hectic show because we got so much coming and going, but we're going to have a big show tomorrow. Stay with us Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern on the SCIF, and check us out on podcast. Put cdm.press in your daily scan and support our sponsors. Thank you very much. We will see you tomorrow.